What's up, buddy?
What's up, Dave?
How's it going? So
Good.
I was just messaging you that I can't for the life of me task at all right now, like anyone for anything, because I'm kind of like stuck thinking that whatever we task somebody, they could just be reporting back conceptual story lore data. Because the Moana project, everybody picked up on it. It was future predictive, digital, entirely fictional, yet everybody's reporting the same thing with, like a pyramidal mountain-like structure and going into like an underworld and stuff. And then on that celestial catastrophe project that we had, I just kept noticing all like the things lining up. So now I want to go task out all these mysteries, and I'm wondering like, crap, like how do we like protect ourselves against the just going and viewing lore, doing like a Tanner Dam style thing with things that we're trying to get down to like the real truth. So that's what I want to brainstorm. How do we fix that?
Well, I think to myself, whenever this topic comes up of like telepathic overlay or task or overlay or whatever, I think to myself that I was trained, the whole time, through remote viewing training, I'm training myself to remote view a target, not to read somebody's mind or interpretation or whatever. When we do, what I have noticed, even like on verifiables we have, it seems to me that we pick up data from almost from all the sources. You know what I mean? So to be able
That's
to
what I'm seeing.
completely, negate that. Now, I've done stuff, and Don's done stuff where he, in the tasking they write, disregard any pre-assumptions and, any that kind of a thing to kind of try and help evade that. Does it work 100%? We don't know, because we don't, if it's unverifiable, it's unverifiable. We really don't know.
I think if I task people viewing flat Earth, and like I was saying to you over voice chat, like the last ship that went through the ice wall down in Antarctica and like reached the outer continental islands and stuff, I think that viewers would come back and report that. I think if I asked them to look for the circular disc and the dome structure around the Earth, they would report that.
Yeah.
And I don't think it matters whether it's real or not. It's like whatever I go task them with, they'll report back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because in lieu of nothing, that's the thing too, because they had this project where Dick was doing where they did some big imagination target. It was completely made up. They made up this whole thing. And the remote viewers, they described this place and they viewed it, much like kind of the Moana thing where it doesn't really exist in reality, but it was remote viewed. In lieu of not having anything there, so clearly the Moana project proved that, from my perspective, is that if in lack of reality, your subconscious will create one in order for you to get the data back. So that's the question too. Like, is your subconscious just wants you to kind of succeed? Like, is that like no matter what? It's that, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Well, it's very similar to the Tanner Dam project in that every movie starts as a bunch of people theorizing about how the story is going to go, right? Like they come up with a story inside their head, they do the visuals, then eventually they put it into paper or digital or something, but like it's still this imaginative concept that was created. And that's really like what we're viewing is that and what we're going to see. So I think it's the same as Tanner Dam. It's the same as any story. It's the same as like an ice wall story, or, asking you, like view Game of Thrones or something. Like all of it's on the table. So how do we task and differentiate, or how do we as viewers self-task while we view to add these probes to try and look at, what's the true aspects here and what is the conceptual lore, and go explore both of them or target in on just the truth? I think it's really hard.
Oh, for sure. It's definitely hard. The psychic space, it's extremely difficult. So, like I said, I think your idea of like probing for reality-based things, and but I've seen where it kind of just, like I said, like some of those projects I've seen from Farsight or whatever, where like it just falls apart. Like there was some kind of pre-assumption in the assembling of the task. See, when I do unknowns, I try and put myself as far away from it as I can. Meaning, like when I did the psychic penetration, I did assume that the government had some kind of, way of detecting psychic penetration. I just had no idea what it could be. What came back, everybody came back with the same thing, and it was completely nothing like what I expected. So like in that situation, it was an unverifiable, it's a mystery target. I assumed something was there, but the turnout was so outside of what I could have imagined. So yeah, how do you get that ambient lore out of it? That is the thing, because a lot of times I don't know if you know how it is. You're picking up. It's like you're drawing from every channel. When I did this celestial event, I had an impression like spot on the map. Okay, and that impression to me, because I've remote viewed enough, I knew it was telling me that, okay, there's something in the feedback that's relating to an image, relating to something. Like I just knew that kind of that impression. And sure enough, when I got the feedback, I got that planetary, the thing that I have on the title, that he sent with the feedback. So did I incorporate that publication? Did that become part of the target? You know what I'm saying? So
You know,
yeah.
like everyone's calling free form, what we used to call cowboy, what I now call like visual intuition strategy thing. At the end, we always do a couple probes, which are like, go probe the feedback, right? And like we literally try and put a little box for the feedback, and then you try and like actually see the feedback. And then, you probe like, is there a picture? Is there a video? What's inside of it? And that's just get straight to the point. What am I going to be feedbacked on? And then sometimes you find out it's not even feedbackable. And then the other thing is like we probe regrets, like what would I regret about this? And sometimes it comes through like, you thought that was way too literal and it wasn't as literal as you were making it out to be. So there's those types of self-probes that we can do to try and correct some of it.
I noticed too, a lot of remote viewers, and I don't think they realize this when they're not really, they need to, every once in a while, they need to kind of check themselves, because when you do unverifiables, if you cannot verify, when you get the tasking back, that's not feedback. You know what I mean? They have to understand that is not feedback. That is your tasking. And in lieu of a feedbackable target, it's kind of because we have to admit, there is a gratification, humbling, if you will, when a psychic gets feedback and he's on target. I think it's hard to kind of deny that. I don't care how humble of a person you are. You want to be on target. So when you see that, go ahead.
It's the same when other viewers all get together and like we have something, for instance, you described underwater structure thing and like a shoreline. I described that and Kyle described that. And Kyle and I's shoreline looks the same, right? Like we both drew this like zigzag pattern there. So even if it's unverifiable, when you get all the viewers matching up on their data, like for instance with Moana, where we didn't know what it was, but we're getting like the same the number 5 coming up, 5 biologicals going underground to some location. That's the same sort of dopamine rush that you get when you're viewing a verifiable target. And I think with that, I've been feeling a lot of like, oh yeah, like we're nailing this, while also thinking, oh crap, like what if we're just all nailing the story behind it? Like, I'm gonna go look under like the left paw of the Sphinx and tell it that, but if we get back like the Hall of Records and all this stuff and it's flooded and like the Egyptian government is protecting it and stuff, those are things we already know. So what if we're just reading into the lore of the chamber under the paw of the Sphinx, right? Like how do we actually get to that truth? And something you were saying is the surprise factor. That shoreline in the celestial catastrophe thing, that was great because that was totally unexpected. Like, we're supposed to be looking at these large celestial bodies, and for some reason we're all describing like the same gestaltic thing using liquid, land, and structure underwater. Like, what's going on here, and why?
Yeah, and like from that project, if I took it at face value, because there's a lot of similar sketches there of land features and structures. So from that, if I just took it at face value, I would say that there was probably, and this is another thing. That's just the magic of remote viewing. It's just we're talking about things. It's really just we could build models around this. We really don't know, but what's interesting is we all kind of hone in on the same stuff, and to me, it's part of the magic of remote viewing. And then I think that we were kind of honed in on one specific moment, event, place that wasn't necessarily built into the tasking. It's just we all kind of synced up and went to that specific event. Now, there may have been, well, we don't know. None of this could have happened, or some of these planets could have blown up, or this could have been this. But for whatever reason, it was as if it probably happened on a multiple planetary scale, but we all went to the same exact one. Same thing with the defensive psychic defense. I mean, they could have other stuff too, but for whatever reason, all the viewers went to this orb structure thing as part of the kind of the magic of the RV. But again, are we picking up on the lore, stuff like that? I can't say.
I feel like the easiest solution is just for us to always include it in the tasking. Or not the tasking, the viewing protocol. So as you're walking through your probes, it's not just tangibles and intangibles, but there's a direct, is this real? Is this conceptual? If I try and split it out, is there's always a story behind pretty much everything. So maybe even if you're looking at a building, right? Like Crystal Palace or the Eiffel Tower, like you can go pick out the story element of everything. Everything that's built has a story. So maybe we just always assume, there's a story aspect, and here I'm only going to look into like the real physical materialistic happening. And then over there, I'm going to look at just the conceptual nature, which I do have that a little bit. My story conceptual thing is like a double spiral. And so I do pick that off sometimes, and then maybe I'm already doing it. I don't know. But our recent stuff has just concerned me as a tasker. I don't want to lead everybody down just telling fantastical stories when we're all interested in, figuring out whether there really are aliens controlling these drones up in New Jersey, or, what the true nature is.
Yeah, I mean, I tell my students too, tasking is the hardest job, really, in my opinion. It's easy to view because tasking, especially in a scientific setting, it's one thing if we're just like trying to help somebody, like we're just trying to find someone or something like that. But when you're trying to keep it stringent and scientific and stuff, tasking is the most difficult because a word or two, it's just everybody's trying to pick it apart. And I always remind them of that. You set it up your task just to know that everybody's going to scrutinize what you're doing and how you're doing it at all times. So you just got to do the best you can. But like in the last one we did with the celestial event, it was worded in a way where it was like, okay, describe this, that, and the other, or if not, just describe the orc cloud, right? Well, I fucking described both. I mean, I did. I mean, the cloud was in my part of my description of my session. Now, and I don't know if that's...
I drew the spherical thing with, like the energy stuff that kind of maps to the shape of the orc cloud as well. So I didn't know if that was just reading into it the wrong way.
Exactly. So I typically kind of cast a wide net. Like I grab as much as I can. I almost rip the table off of, everything set data points. So it's almost like I grab whatever he's looking for plus that aspect. But when it's one or the other, it's important to know. But either way, it's putting you into almost like an ARV kind of a situation, like a like a one or the other situation.
That was an
So
ARV project. Yeah.
yeah, which we all know how that works out as far as on some settings. You know what I mean? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Mhm.
As far as in a monetary perspective. So I think your idea with probing, the reality, the feedback, it's a good idea, and the tasking, stuff like that.
There's
But again, it's a good point.
there's two types of tasking, and the tasking that I actually really like getting is just the Eiffel Tower. And it's literally just a pointer that says, here is the thing, go to describe. It's up to you to go get everything about that, right? So I look at it, because I'm in software, I look at it as like a pointer, which would be like a reference pointer that says, here is the thing in time and space that you're supposed to go look at. You could specify a year, you could specify something specific. But when you say like, describe the Eiffel Tower at 8:46 a.m. on August 2nd, 1942, or something, right? And then like, tell me about this, and this. You're basically loading the whole query up. And then if I like bucket that and cut it out, do some like culling on like the information, then I'm like really getting very specific, which has its time and place when you're looking for something specific, right? But I really just like things that are just, here's the thing, and then go explore. It leaves the viewer free to go do time explorations and tell the story or not tell the story. Go look at, how the Eiffel Tower was saved, because they were going to take it down, but then they like used it for radio communications and stuff. That was all, those are things that wouldn't show up if you're like, just describe the photo, right? So I think that's where, when I'm tasking practice targets or to people who aren't doing those level of movement commands yet, I usually am like, describe this exact thing. But on these fun, operational, esoteric mystery targets, it's a little bit more like, what's under the Sphinx? Is there anything? Go tell me like the true nature of that. I don't know how to do that without biasing the story. And maybe the answer is, as I was talking about, like, you can task and cull stuff. So maybe it's like, this is the only real true nature of it. But maybe it is the real solution is the viewer's self-probing for whether something is real or not.
Yeah, I mean, when I could say that when I have like if my students, like I have a student that does a lot of my mystery tasking for me, he knows how I want it. He pretty much knows how I want it set up in that my idea behind it, or the way I like to remote view for me, the way I perceive, I always tell him, I said, keep it as small as you can. Because if there's something, if, like, let's say there's an abduction in, Hudson Valley, whatever, put me just go, Hudson Valley, this date, this time, describe what's there. He doesn't have to put all that other stuff in. If there's the interest, the intention is driving it. If there's something there that's actually happening, I'm gonna pick up on it. He could just put me there. He doesn't need to add in, go in this, that, and the other. And then if the tasking is very broad, I have him break it up into pieces, focal points.
There's that one I did for you that's private, so I'm not going to talk about it. But there was the tasking was, I was picking up that it was like a collection of events. So then I was like, just go pick an event and describe like what's happening here. But there was like this multiplicity thing, and that I don't even know if you remember like which one I'm talking about. Then when we looked at the tasking, it was like a repeated set of things that were happening. So I was picking up on, there's the concept of all of this happening. Why does this, like, if you had New Jersey drones flying overhead, right? A viewer may see that like over a period of time, there's these like slice moments where the stuff keeps occurring, but it's not saying like describe this specific occurrence, right?
Yeah. And actually, I mean, it's interesting because I watched Birdie's session on the drone. I haven't seen a lot of the sessions on it, but I see that a lot of remote viewers have done it. You've got Courtney saying that it's his friends. To be honest with you, from my perspective, it looks a lot like what was being described by the viewers in the psychic penetrative defense to me. These orbs that are zipping around that seem like AI drones of some type, that's what they look like to me. But but the way looking at the sessions, and it was, she did really well and everything. But again, but there's still this like, but who, who is it? There's still this kind of this. There's nothing. We really don't know anything about it.
Well,
Obviously she was on target, but
yeah.
what are they?
I mean, I took an unblind look at it because I feel like blinding is a problem of discernment, where you're trying to, prove to everybody or prove to yourself and limit that. I find that by even practicing unblind viewing, you start to notice when the analytical mind kicks up, right? So when I'm fully blind, I'm always wondering like what's going on, right? So I'm like, it puts my brain into a state where I'm thinking, okay, what is this? What is this? What is this? And then I start constantly guessing, right? And the constant guess is like the thing that you want to get rid of. So when you're just like, go merge with the tree outside, it's like the Ingo Swann thing where, he knew the room that he was in at SRI, but he didn't know the symbol. There's still something that you're blind to that you can go figure out, right? So when I did the unblind session on the drones and stuff, I basically just got that it's like a military Space Force thing, and that they were going in this pattern. We didn't know anything about it yet, but it kind of like drew this pattern that I think the AOL I had was the way that they make like the water stuff for heating a sidewalk for ice, where they're going back and forth in this thing, kind of making some wide net, and then it was looking for something on the ground or whatever. So that's kind of matches to the stories that are saying, it is our government, and they're looking for, radioactive materials or something on the ground like that, right? For the orb part, like when celebrity security is like, they like put up this flashing thing that prevents photos from being taken. I got that it was just that there's just this like 3-dimensional little ball thing. And I didn't even know that they were doing that. I thought that all the drones looked like planes. So I didn't know that there were any videos of them like morphing or doing that. But in my session, I got that they had basically had this shielding technology that was just this rapid pulsating bluish purple light going out in all directions, so that when you would photograph it, like it doesn't actually show up correctly, right?
Yeah.
And then after that, that's when after I read the stories about, like the radioactive material, things missing for the medical equipment, and the theories that that's what they were looking for, and the orb videos and stuff. So there was things that got feedback, which are cool, but it's still just the story. I got feedback on the story, right? I don't know if that's correct, or if it's Courtney's alien friends, or if it's Iran and Mothership. I don't know. They're all stories.
And the thing is too is look, some of these unverifiables that are taken on by different groups get a lot of the same stuff, and I always invite everybody to remote view any targets I ever do, whether whether they get a different turnout or whatever. I don't care. It's unknown to me, so it could be wrong. But what I find interesting is, and something we got to keep in mind now, like that MH370, was it that flight that went down? I can't remember which one it was, but something like that. Anyway, Courtney did a project on it, and they, and it's funny, like he does that project, and he's like, "Oh, it's a fact. Let's wrap this up in a bow. Like this is the story. Oh, the pilot fell asleep, and this, that, and the other." Meanwhile, I got all these orbs zipping around this thing in my session of it, which other people got as well. And they didn't seem to pick up on that. And it makes me wonder, it just calls into a lot of question, like, are there some targets that are not perceivable to some people? Or are they, why are we perceiving it different? Was there something in it? Is he overlaying his pre-assumptions, and that's why he's not getting it? Because he assumed that the pilot fell asleep? Because it's one or the other. I mean, or whatever. But if that is an aspect of it, they should have picked up on that. I would think in my mind, unless something else is happening here that we can't account for.
This gets to more of my like weird, wacky theories on remote viewing and stuff, right? So in terms of the tasking and it being a pointer and identifier, there's like that chaos magic concept of a thought ball, right? Where like you have this thought form thing, and I physically put it in front of me and give it proprioception. So that's like physical space to it. And I'm like, all the information about this target is going to be in this little bubble, right? And then I open up that bubble and I'm basically like, cool, everything's going to be here. And it's a little bit like on a computer, you're saying, I'm going to go follow the reference to the point of information, right? And the way that I look at tasking is like you're creating that reference to the information. So if the tasker creates the reference to something, they could add a bunch of stuff in it, right? Or it could go to something slightly different. That's basically like, I want you to go view this, I'm saying this, but really there's this coupled intent with my own stuff. That's the tasker overlay thing, right? And I think that's why you can get multiple people tasking the same thing. And it's not actually just go to the Eiffel Tower. It's like, go to the Eiffel Tower and describe what I'm looking for. Which is kind of the point of tasking usually is, there's something that you're interested in. But like I'm interested in that Hall of Records under the Sphinx, right? How do I make sure that I'm not just saying like, okay, Sphinx underneath of it and my collection of
how do you
lore
know
with
we're
Edgar
just not
Casey.
giving you what you want to hear?
I want you to ignore me and just go to the physical location. Yeah. Cut me out.
And I've had a session, this only happened to me one time that I'm aware of, but when all this war started happening in Ukraine, out the monitor, I was being monitored on this one, and this monitor had a session previously with another remote viewer. He had tasked them about like an upcoming disaster, war or something, or big explosion or something, and they got a sense of a war zone, right? So he goes in there, and I'm like, I'm sitting there, I'm working, all of a sudden I'm hearing explosions, like in my head. I feel like I'm in a war zone. I finish up the session. Turns out it's some upcoming event that never comes to fruition, no. And I was so pissed off because I think that he like wanted it so bad or whatever, there was some thought in his mind that was so strong, that he not only influenced me, but the other viewer on it. And again, in lieu of nothing, okay, you're setting up a target that's not there, that never happens. You give them what they want to hear, kind of a thing. So I can't remember what the exact task it was, how it was, but like if I just would have just had described a building or whatever, but there must have been some pre-assumption involved in the tasking. And, again, I try to separate myself from it as far as I can be. I mean, I almost want to be wrong because I just want the truth. I don't care about being right or wrong. I just want to know objective reality, what's going on, like you're saying with the.
And that's where I think we can self-task this. So for instance, I was talking about like the thought ball thing, right? And then I open it up and there's like a physical proprioception space that I place things, right? And I can, if we look at like the way that RV normally works, the whole thing is a black box and then you're just asking probes to it. So I don't know if I'm asking for the real structure or the other one, right? But if you like physically separate them out and you're like, this black box is going to be the real nature reality, and this black box is going to be the conceptual thing. And then, oh yeah, are there any other conceptual or physical aspects that I should be looking at here, right? So let's say that there's 5 different stories about what the drones are in New Jersey. How can I basically open up that one thing and be like, show me everybody's ideas, and then go enumerate each one? That would be cool, right? Because then you could basically be like, okay, I don't know which is the real one, or you could probe, like which is the real one of these 5 theories? Is it aliens, the U.S. government, or Iran, right? Yeah, what's going on here? And I think that sort of exploration and enumeration of a target we can do as viewers, and maybe that's really like what we need to do. We just need to be better viewers.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I mean, consensus to me, especially when it comes to like the unknown, carries a lot of weight, and not just consensus within a group, but with overlapping with outside groups. Now, when we do a project of unknowns and we do something, and then years later, decades later, like some of these underground bases and stuff like that, different taskers, it's worded a little bit different, but all basically come up with the same stuff. That's very telling to me. Like I have really no. If somebody put a gun to my head, I would say, yeah, there's bases under Mount Perdido or this, that, and the other. Not just my session. I wouldn't that wouldn't be enough for me. But to see the overlapping data, decades apart, my sketches, their sketches, I'm pretty convinced. But that's a lot of data. That's a lot of session work going into projects like that. On the more thinly, where there's not as much viewers on it, not as many projects, we have to be cautious because we don't know. We just don't know.
I want to solve it. I want to fix it. Otherwise, like I never read fiction ever. I still don't read fiction. If I go watch a science fiction or if I go watch a movie, it has to be some like weird science fiction time dilation thing in it. I don't know why, but it's got to be like Interstellar or something like that, right? So that's where like I don't really want to just be a storyteller with RV. I want to go get some personal gnosis on some stuff. And maybe these are impressions where like I think you said on the Moana project that there are elements that didn't feel real. And I sometimes get that too, but it's not like the difference between feeling gestalts. It's like there's just an overwhelming, claircognizant knowing of what something is like. And you know how I was saying that building discernment, that there's a feeling to imagination versus there's a feeling to getting data. I think based off of wearing a muse all the time is that the feeling is like when you're sleepy and drowsy in theta or delta versus having like an active beta brain. If I put this on right now, my brain's probably like high beta, right? Like it's focused and intent. And then there's a feeling between those two things. So I wonder what the feeling, and I know that between real data versus imagination now. Like I just know the feeling. Maybe we need to add that feeling into our repertoire library of tools that says, like I know what this is. If it's real, conceptual, imagination, story, and kind of like map that out.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful in other situations too, maybe even like gaming and ARV. I mean, because like when we did that project, the Moana project, like when I do a typical event, like something that actually happens in history, those are my favorite targets to do because I feel like I can navigate them if it's tasked small enough and properly. I could navigate it from basically start to finish and tell the story frame by frame. But if the target's abstract or it's big or just not based in reality, I can tell them I can't. It doesn't make sense to me. Like I'm struggling. So like with the Moana project, like I'm getting psychic information. I know I'm getting information that's psychic. That's according to the target. But I couldn't when I go to make the connections. I know that it's not working. You know what I mean? So I could kind of pull threads, but I can't make it a symphony. You know what I mean? Like I would with an event. But I could tell. But as soon as I'm struggling, if I feel like something's a struggle, or I'm not having fun, because even in a target I don't like, but it's going well, I'm enjoying it. Like there's an internal feeling of like kicking ass. You know, it's the best way I could describe it.
I get that frustration on taskings I don't like, where I'm just like, I know I'm not gonna like this tasking.
Yeah. It's like you feel. It's like you. Here's how I just kind of think about and describe it. It's like you're feeling the back end of it. Like you're feeling how you feel when you get the feedback. There's something internally, like there's something internally when you just get to know yourself. You can almost sit the target and you're going to be like, you just know you don't like it. Like at the end of you're not going to like it for whatever reason at the end.
And then there's the opposite feeling when you open something up and you're like, oh, I'm going to like this target. I can already tell, like, this is a really good, crisp, clean, clear tasking, and I'm going to knock this out of the park. Get that in like the first 30 seconds.
Yeah. If I'm excited, like if you task me a project and I'm excited to send you some sketches, I know it's good. It is. You just know when there's, I mean, you don't always, but there's sometimes, a lot of times if you're just in the groove, you can, this, it's so like it's so real, the psychic
Mhm.
connection. You're in the groove.
See, I thought the Moana project was silly, but the implications of the Moana project lead to this, where now I'm having an existential crisis. So yeah, it's silly, but
Well, it's
but
experimental
it
and it's telling. I mean, I never
yeah,
would have thought. I never
it's
would
a
have
big
thought.
experiment.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very like we've talked about this before. You're much more open minded in that. Where like I never would have thought I could have a sensation of being on the water in a not real water place, but when you were talking to me,
It's
well,
like
you just build
synesthesia.
this, yeah, you build this world and it's, and your subconscious will build it for you so you can feel it. And I'm like, no, 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 there's no way. And then yet I had that AI of like, oh, I feel like I'm floating on the water. There's no water there. You know what I mean? And so then that goes into a whole nother thing of like, did your subconscious create this for you, or is there does it exist on some level of reality outside that you're you know what I'm saying? Uh, because we
So
really
this
don't
is
know.
this is more Dave 2 modeling and stuff, but like Lynn Buchanan says there's 7 senses. I would say there's 12. And the reason why is like you have your 5, there's probably more than that, but you have your 5 normal physical senses, right? And if you think about that, you have like a bunch of neurons in your eye that are like firing back into your brain, and it reaches your neocortex and it runs this like pattern recognition thing, right? But when I get clairvoyance, sight, like psychic sight, where is it coming from? Is it the pineal? Is it the cluster of neurons above the heart? Like where is this coming from and how does it get routed back into the brain? So when I first started trying to get psychic sight, I closed my eyes and they'd make the space there and there'd be nothing coming through, right? So I'm like, I want to see, I don't want flashes on a screen like an AOL. I want to like see it in front of me. How do I get that? And I basically convinced myself that if I'm getting that signal, my brain has to figure out how to render it the same as sight. It's not the same neuron firing. It's like something totally, completely different that is getting translated and rendered as that. So it's a little bit like language where when you learn another language, you know how it's like in French, water would be de l'eau, and then there's water, and then there's the concept of water. Oh, I just lost you. Are you still
I
there?
don't know what's going on with my camera. I don't know. I'm using the other camera. Something's going on there. But
When you're learning a foreign language, there's the word water, and so like the low water and water. The thing that you want is the concept of water, right? But what we describe as water and what we see as water and feel and everything, those are just our brain's interpretations of it, right? There's like a true physical nature that is nothing like we are seeing or describing. Those are all human brain, physical sense stuff. So that's kind of the way that I look at the psychic senses is then you have 5 other senses. They're either your 5 physical and your 5 psychic to match, right? And they have to get rendered the same. So if you're pulling data from, Moana or something, you're pulling visual data from something else and asking it to map it onto your human physical experience. But it's not the same. Does that make sense? So that's why I think you get the synesthesia where you can go look at things that aren't real and it doesn't matter because it's bringing it down a different pipeline and your brain is rendering it for you. So all of it is synesthesia in that regard. That was a long-winded way.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's interesting. More and more I feel like it seems like such a just basically information-based reality. It's
That's what I believe.
I mean whenever we do like with Dow with this channeling or whatever, I mean it's all coming, it's not like we switch dials, what I mean? It's all coming from like kind of the same place. You may just go about it a little bit different, but
I don't know if I told you, but I've been doing mediumship readings for people, and it's no different to me. I'm like, just don't tell me anything about you. I do an ideogram, I pull them up. The intent is for a collection of biologicals that they want to speak to come forward, dead or alive or whatever, right? And then I pull one up, and it's the same thing as finding a bio in a blind remote viewing target. I don't change anything that I'm doing. There's still, it's either the pineal gland or the cluster of neurons above your heart or quantum entanglement tunneling with little microtubulars in your brain. I don't know, but the data comes through the same way. I feel it the same way. I feel like RV versus intuition versus channeling or mediumship, they're all the same thing. And I'd kind of like to just work with them like one way. And then I can slap on like a different hat when I want to put a different hat on.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if somebody, I mean, I've done quite a few sessions just on recorder where I'm just basically opening up the target in my mind and starting small and working and just going through the motions, green, blue, red, blocky, but and then next thing you know, you're there. It doesn't matter. It doesn't seem to matter, especially once you've learned, you've kind of you've trained yourself one way or the other. You could literally do it like that. You could just, instead of going through this big, kind of similar, you don't have to do any of this, cumbersome things.
I still do all the cumbersome things if you listen to the
Yeah,
transcript.
yeah.
That's why my transcript now, I'm asking ChatGPT, can you pull out my S2 of X? Because I still go through and name all the gestalts the way you do it in TRV, like X, A, B, C. So then I'll be like, I'm doing S2 of X. And I'll be like, extract my S2 of X data. And it does it for me. So same thing as paper. I'm just reporting it here. But the way that I do active imagination is you don't just visualize it. You go get really weird and touch everything and like lick it. So like if you're seeing a room or whatever, you like go up to the wall, you knock on it. What's it sound like, right? You yell, you touch the floor. This is all in your imagination, but it's the same thing as S2. You're going through and activating each one of the senses. And as you activate the senses, that brings your imagination to fruition. It connects you closer to the target. It opens it up, right? That's really how you get that connection is, engaging every one of your senses on it.
Yeah.
More Dave 2 theory. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. It's and again, like to me, this is like the final frontier of consciousness. Something that we should have been working on collectively more seriously for a long time. And now people are starting to kind of figure it out. I was just watching something the other day about psychic potentials, but with Sean Ryan, he was on Joe Rogan, but people are starting to realize that, hey guys, this is absolutely a real thing. And, and now we're getting to the point where we're trying to fine tune it and actually really know what's going on by doing projects like that with Moana and stuff, and what we could, where we can go with it, what the boundaries we could push with it. After that project, it makes me really wonder some of the other stuff that we talked about, like influencing and the putting like a guest spot in it, type of thing, influencing the trajectory of the movie.
The Moana project was that. I didn't care about anybody really describing Moana before the movie comes out. It's more about all the implications of if we're able to do that, what does that mean? That's like the real target there for that project is this wonky discussion about, okay, like how do I wrap my head around the fact that we're able to do that? How does that change our perception?
Yeah. And I think you could, I mean, like you said, with the probing and doing this, these targets and this is reality, this isn't, and all that. But I forgot where I was going with this. I lost my train of thought.
Going deep.
What was I going to say? Something about the way.
We've opened Pandora's box with the Moana project, where we already knew some of it due to Tanner Dam and Tasker overlay.
Yeah. Oh, this is what I was saying. The connection between Tasker and the viewer, there may be a tether there that we'll never get around. You know what I mean? Like you may actually remote view the target, but there is an entanglement factor that we may not ever be able to get around. I mean, I go back to that project that Andrew did where they precognitively painted a painter's painting, and at the same time, from the perspective of the painter, influenced the outcome of the painting. You know, he's typically like a floral painter, paints flowers like that. But Andrew, being the guy that he is, he's not going to want to draw that crap. And so he ends up drawing this shark thing, and he says that it was like he was wrestling with himself during the painting. Now again, what is going on there? Like, maybe he just can't draw flowers, so they came up with their subconscious. But I've also had projects where I've done precognitive stuff. I said, okay, we're going to collectively, precognitively go to the most noteworthy event on such and such date, okay? And we go there, we remote view, and both things happen, but we get separate things. Because what I think is most interesting and what he thinks is most interesting are two different things. So our subconscious weren't in agreement about what's most newsworthy on that date. Two things happened. He reported on that. I reported on this. So that's another thing too. It just makes me wonder, there may be a cohesiveness depending on the individual and the target. Because you may send in 5 viewers. Okay, what happened? What's most biggest project? You put 5 viewers on December 15th or whatever. 3 people may get one thing, 2 people may get something else, and all of it happens. It's just a lot to kind of to figure out. And every time I think I pin something down, it does something different. So I was like, you're not gonna figure it out. Like there's literally a force out there.
I think you probably noticed like news from the Middle East and Asia completely missing from our news predictions. I never see anybody's news predictions reporting anything over there. But my theory would be that if you go over there and they have viewings and they're speaking another language, we're not on their YouTube or like looking at them. They're probably reporting things that are more local to them, right? That are impactful to them. So if something happens over here, it's not impactful to them. Something happens over there, it's not impactful to us, unless it's on like a really big scale, like 9/11 or something like crazy big earthquake or something. Like we always hear about the tsunamis or MH370, something that makes our news. But that's really, what is impactful to every person.
Yeah, and as far as the precognitive stuff, we've talked about before, and you've done some more, the exact date, pinpoint targeting, because it's really useless without that. I mean, I saw, who did a project the other day. It's a couple stick figures and a gun. Like, are you kidding me? There's gunshots every day, everywhere. You're not telling me anything.
Mine was overnight on the 4th and 5th. There were these, there's an aerial thing going on with 3 different levels of an aerial battlefield type thing. And the implications of it was that the new vector for war is no longer 2-dimensional. It's not like elevation or that. It's that there's really this like 3D box where if you were like look at the battlefield, it has to be this like holographic 3-dimensional thing. And then I was describing this like bomb blowing up and stuff. So could that map to some of the New Jersey drone things? Sure. Right? Did a bomb go off? No. Could the bomb have been conceptual? And like, that's what we're concerned about? Sure. I even said in my thing, I don't think it's going to happen. Or if it does, it's just too easy to overfit that data to anything. Right? Like, yes, there are military operations happening in the sky and there's bombs going off around the world. Not specific enough. You know what I mean? Like yeah. So I don't feel like I can fit that data to anything. And that's why getting dates and exact details, naming names, not just describing, I feel like it's so important on the predictive stuff. Otherwise it's like, I predict in January, a bomb will go off from some plane delivered mechanism. I can just say that it's going to happen.
And there's something, and again, it's clear to me. I mean, I pay attention to the numbers. I pay attention to the averages. I know where I'm at most of the time. If you give me something that's based in reality, like an actual event, it's not like abstract, it's just something, my hit rate is very high. You know what I mean? Like, it's very high. But when you go into precognitive events, it dips. And then when you go into precognitive, like gambling or something, it dips tremendously. So
Yep.
there's something
The
about
trickster thing.
Yeah, well, I believe that. I mean, it's just, to me, it's got to be a cause and effect type of situation. Like literally, you could view this as long as you're not making any significant changes or this, that, and the other. But or you remote view an event that just doesn't play out, that never happens.
Oh,
And
I'm busting out the whiteboard.
oh, go ahead.
What I'm wondering is not just on the, like, is this stuff real, right? But like, you know how I'm talking about all the data as a bubble? So is this right here? So this is the way that I look at the target, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where I make this spherical bubble and then everything's going to be inside of it. But what if we like thought of it as a Venn diagram? And then, you know, like over here is the true target, the true nature of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then over here is, you know, this like conception, the concept of the target. So how can I take the single bubble and then within it be looking at the stuff and say, like, this is the target, this is this, I'm going to separate them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So even on a news target, or this is what's connecting in my head with future prediction stuff. How do I get it so that, you know, this is a probable future and this is the one that will really happen to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
Real 100%. Can I open up a future event and can I split out, you know, like here's all the different probabilities and then get to the one that will happen?
Mm-hmm.
Because that would fix like the trickster effect. We're all going to be filthy rich.
Mm-hmm.
Well, our predictions will be perfectly accurate and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
It comes down to a discernment problem again. No, blind and unblind. Am I able to discern fact from fiction? Same thing with the Moana project. Was I able to determine fact from fiction? Am I able to determine which one of the 5 things for the New Jersey drone is fact or fiction? We don't. We're like completely lacking discernment in this department.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I'm like, how can I split this out, right? I can leave them all there, right? I just want to go probe them as 3 different things. So I open it up and I'm able to split it out and differentiate using discernment and say, cool, here's the real target. You know, this is an aspect, this is X, this is A, this is B. I will go describe them all separately so that we get a full picture.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm able to to really get what's going on. Because right now, you know, we're just reporting on the whole thing. And that's because I think in the way that RV is supposed to work with stuff, right, it's just supposed to be this black box. You're over here, you're asking questions and getting back responses. But like, it could be to multiple things, you know, like where's the tasker intent in here, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I should be able to siphon that off self-tasking and say, nope, I will get to you as C, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the probes then, instead of it going to everything at once, you know, I'm just probing what's real. I'm just probing this one. I'm just probing that. I'm just probing tasker intent.
Mm-hmm. You know, another thing too is interesting is, yeah, and it's I like your ideology there, Dave. It's very interesting. When another example, when Courtney was trying to, a lot of the groups actually were trying to determine the next presidential candidate, and Courtney went and did like, okay, he did like 3 different timelines, like, oh, if he wins, or 2 different. Well, the funny part is, and nobody thought about like Biden not running. It was an assumption that he was gonna be involved. So, you know, you're remote viewing these timelines that never come to fruition. There was an element that was added that wasn't even part of the the thing again, so go back to that trickster effect. So like even so here's what's interesting to me is say you figure out a way, where you're separating all these things. To me, it's almost like you'll run into another menu of problems, once you've gotten to that point.
Definitely. It's going to be an
of
onion of problems that you have to peel a layer to find the next one.
Yeah. And like, I mean, you look at conceptually, I mean, or how people perceive, you look at the Akhenaten project, which I was really proud of that project. And it was a very grounded story. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. There's no ETs involved. There's no like wild. And yet, all these people want to give them a hard time because it's, telepathic tasking overlay or this, that, and the other. It's like, if you guys can't accept this, you're going to have a hard time with some of this. I mean, it just makes no sense to me. Like this, but I told Don, I said, it'd be nice if you could incorporate that and have a smoking gun, like a literal artifact. Then you'd have to locate something like that. Because at some point we need to figure out a way, kind of like what you're talking about, where we could bridge this gap definitively, where we could say, this is not lore, or this is not, because right now we can't do that. And I tell everybody, take it with a grain of salt, because this,
I feel like it's the same discernment building of imagination, your AOL, versus the data, right? We're just not trying to differentiate between those different layers when we're doing the viewing.
Yeah,
or maybe some are. I'm not.
Yeah. Just collecting.
Speaking for myself,
I'm just like a vacuum. I'm just pulling threads. So
there's one other thing I wanted to mention. You were talking about when you view something possibly affecting it. Maybe I'm like jumping the gun here saying this, whatever, but we've been using tasking each other and stuff to try and manifest. So like if somebody wants something, and they're talking about it, like a job or something, I will task them with it, because there's that whole quantum woo-woo theory thing that adding an observer, collapses the wave function and makes it happen. For something, it changes that. So if I say like, you are going to definitively view the moment that you get this dream job that you want, right? And then you go and you view that, is it possibly making it happen? Like the influencing the painter, right? Am I making that probable future thing more likely to happen because now you've consciously observed it? I don't know. But we are running those experiments for fun. So, because I like to get into the remote influencing side, not just viewing. So observation, viewing for influence is something I'm interested in.
My perspective is, and I could be wrong, I don't know, but from my perspective, I feel like someone knows the eventuality of things, of our base reality. I believe that and by our perspective, it's all random and, it's, coincidence and stuff. But I do believe it's all predestined, predetermined. Just better, because I'll give you an example. Like I did, somebody that was involved in a project where they remote viewed stuff in my future. And this guy's like, "Oh, your house is all jacked up." This is like years ago, your house is you live on a garbage dump. Oh, like what the fuck, and a hurricane came and wiped me out, but I didn't do anything to change. I didn't, you know what I'm saying? Like I could get the information because I didn't do anything to change the inevitability of what happened. Jimmy, before he passed, he had warned me, he had some intuition so I got a generator, so I did have power and stuff. But that hurricane was going to come no matter what. There's, and I was going to be here. So, and I could just tell you, like when I do a sports betting thing, target, which should be a walk in the park for me, literally my subconscious starts working against me. It's or that's what it feels like. So that isn't a coincidence. Not it's I don't like hate sports or something. Something is literally like, no, you can't use this like that. I mean, it's just obvious to me. It's there's something else. There's always this unknown factor in remote viewing. And I
The
think
fact that it
that's
all
going to be,
works unless you get money
yeah,
involved, it's it's
yeah.
insane, right? Like, yeah,
Yeah,
doesn't make any sense.
that's why, like, when we talk about speaking in absolutes in this field, it's ridiculous. You can't, um, Ed May's very much about feedback. You're remote viewing your feedback. To me, feedback is just um, like a byproduct of the process. You're driven to get, people remote view something, but it doesn't have, you go in there and you dig around. You want to see what you got right. You want to see what you got wrong. But also I've done plenty of targets where I didn't get anything back and they seem happy. And that's my feedback.
Also,
That's all I get.
from Joe McMonagle's book, The Stargate Chronicles, didn't they not give the viewers feedback very often? I think he mentioned that they would just be like sitting in a boardroom watching the news trying to get feedback because they weren't going to actually get it. So they would be working a case blind and never get the feedback of what they were working on, but they would kind of connect the dots through what they saw on the TV.
Right.
So that kind of like puts a hole in that argument that it's just the feedback.
Yeah, and I try, to be honest with you, I try and be like the complete opposite of a feedback chaser. Like when we did this project, I didn't go investing in a bureau. I didn't go into, I just don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to make that a thing anyway, because the feedback doesn't matter to me. You know what I mean?
I think that's why if you make it one little bubble that you're going and looking at, here's the stuff I'm probing from the feedback. Here's the real target. Here's the conceptual story behind the tasker's intent. Right? Then I can still go explore feedback, but I didn't make everything about the feedback. Right? I went and probed the different ones.
Be an interesting project. And especially if you made that like part of the repertoire of your process, like training your subconscious to get that.
That's what I'm talking about, changing our method to ensure that we're including these probes.
Yeah.
Where like I'm consciously thinking, how do I separate these during my session?
Yeah. It'd be an interesting project. An easy one to set up because you could do stuff like, I don't know, but you could make up an event. You could do it, an abduction, a case, whatever. You could do it a myriad of different ways and kind of test that out a little bit.
Well, there's got to be plenty. Like we can ask ChatGPT for like a list of things from history where there's multiple stories attached to the same event, right? Like the death of Hitler is one that everybody's always interested in. Did he survive? Did he really die in the bunker? Right? And if you have a viewer that is trying to split out and get multiple stories and stuff, and like that they're going to include those probes for it, actively give them things that have ambiguity and multiple stories. And then we can see, based off of what they deliver, did they split out? Well, there's two things going on here. There's two ideogram conceptual stories that are separate, right? One is a bunker, one is this. Tasker seems to believe it's this one, right? And I know that that's happened a couple times. I got tasked with whether there was anything nefarious in the gateway tapes, right? And while I'm doing it, I'm saying like, I feel like there's this intent where something nefarious is supposed to be going on and there isn't something going on. And then the tasker was the monitor. I was calling them out. I was like, do you feel like this like wave technology thing, it seems like you have tasker bias that this is bad? So then when we got the feedback, it was like, yeah, like we're trying to see if this thing is bad, So I was separating in that with that, right? Well, I'm biased because I like the gateway process. So maybe I'm biased, right? I don't know. I want to comment on whether we're living on like one deterministic time frame. That's like where I've come from. Is I started looking at all this weird stuff in like 2003, 2004 in simulation theory after Nick Bostrom's simulation theory argument. So then we were looking for glitches in the matrix, and that that fed into the Mandela effect, right? So there were things like in 2015 December, I watched Fruit Loops go from FROOT to FRUAT and then back again, right? for Hillary Clinton during the 2016 election from 2Ls to 1L to 2Ls. And what we noticed with all these flip-flops is if you're paying attention, you end up seeing some sort of Mandela effect comes into your life, right? But what we find is that there's people who are like, I've always come from the FRUIT universe, or there was this flip-flop in 2015. There's other people who are like, there's this flip-flop in 2018. And what you realize is that there's all these like merging timelines where people have like different memories of things. And if you take Mandela alone, that is that he died 3 different times, and people have multiple different memories. So to me, I think it's kind of like a Graham Hancock investigation into the past where we're seeing residual memory evidence of these like timelines merging or something. So the way that my thinking has evolved is from we're on one definitive deterministic timeline controlled by bits in a computer machine, floating in space sometime in the future, to it does seem like that we live in a non-deterministic reality that could have multiple probabilities going on. And I don't know which one is going to that I'm going to collapse into, right? Could you and I make 2 free will choices right now and end up in 2 different futures? I don't know. And that's really the fun stuff I like to think about and chase after.
From our perspective, and again, from our perspective, it's free will. But here's how when I remote view, to me, most of the time, it's almost as if your subconscious has made every decision, lived through everything, and is echoing all this information back, from your very last day or whatever. It's almost like that. And so I've often wondered, imagine if we're in this life and we've made every decision already. Our subconscious has made every decision because there is no time. Your subconscious doesn't perceive time linearly. So maybe your subconscious has made these decisions, but we're actively going through the motions linearly, frame by frame. Should I go left? Should I go right? And because this Mandela effect you're talking about, I have experienced that myself. Mainly, though, I experienced it a lot when I was really doing a ton of precognitive remote viewing. I did a deep dive in precognition, and
that's
it was
interesting because I was doing all precog stuff at the time.
Yeah, that'll cause that. And that's what it's interesting that you bring this in, because I kind of call it like bumping the system. And what I mean by that is, if I keep doing precognitive work, I may not get all the right answers. I may not get the thing. But the thing is, I'm trying to actively make a change in my life. I'm trying to, make a decision that's going to, and the system is constantly routing me back, is what it kind of acts like. And in that process, weird things will happen, like somebody won't remember a conversation that we had, or I'll know it, nobody else will. Something has changed.
Dude,
and go ahead.
The weirdest one was some guy in high school I knew. His dad passed away very publicly, and from having a heart attack while out at dinner. And all of a sudden, I think we're 30 years old or something, and I see his dad at his wedding, and I'm like, dude, that guy died. So I go ask a couple people, and they're like, what? No, that's exact. He died, right? And then I go ask the other half of the friend group. They said the exact opposite thing. They were like, no, what are you talking about? He never died, right? So there's a split there where you have, 8 people or so, 4 think that this thing happened, 4 think it didn't happen. Yeah. So it's not to me, that's evidence that there's multiple threads going on that are interweaving. And that's why I've changed my viewpoint only in the last 2 years from determinism to that there's this weird non-deterministic thing happening.
And that's the thing too, if, this Mandela effect, if there's some kind of shifting actually happening, what's shifting? Are you shifting into another time stream? Or is, it's just, it's very bizarre. I mean, you do a lot of precognitive, it gets weird.
I look at it as a big 3-dimensional Plinko. By the way, I have no solid beliefs anymore because I've shattered them so many times that like I just always have like a running theory that changes. But my current theory is like we're falling down in time 3-dimensionally, and it's like a big game of Plinko. And for some free will element that we have, shifts which one we go into. So right now, I kind of believe that like if you and I have the same belief, then we go into the same consensus reality. But if you somehow differ, you fall into a different. But that's not based on anything. I still haven't wrapped. I was talking about like the neocortex and the brain. There's like Jeff Hawkins' book and Ray Kurzweil on like how to build artificial general intelligence and all that stuff. That's where I don't see where the psychic data that we're talking about enters the physical body. It's a big gap. I don't know. Maybe that would be a good remote viewing project, right? Like where does this data come from to get rendered by our brain? So to me, I've always thought like, well, the brain is a deterministic machine. Somebody commits murder sometime or whatever, like in that neural state with those chemicals and all of that, it was fixed. It was set in stone from the moment they were born. Every little interaction that happened in the universe, was going to lead to that. And from this remote viewing stuff and the Mandela effect, I don't know. My current belief that somebody could go shatter in a moment is that there is some sort of free will element that we have, that we are choosing which deterministic reality to enter into, but ultimately that choice is ours.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Another question I had when I actually tested this out before. Sorry about the dogs.
No worries.
But you look at this cryptocurrency now. I could do like what these guys are doing. You could do this too. I mean, we can go remote view crypto, and I think I'd probably be as successful as they would at it. But then I'd have to learn about crypto and understand the market to get anything out of it, which I'm never gonna do. It's just never gonna happen. So, but again, why? And the same reason why those same people don't remote view straight up targets or like gaming and all that stuff is because they run into the same issues. I've tasked a student this to figure out why is crypto so forgiving in RV as compared to just straight money. And the answer I got back surprisingly was it's written in the motherboard.
Interesting.
So
very interesting.
It's almost as if, because from my perspective, and again, it's kind of out of my realm of understanding, but it's almost as if it's written in the code of our reality, and therefore we could kind of, I don't know, read it or something. But
the hashes don't change.
Yeah, but the behavior in the applications is completely different. I guarantee you, we go do crypto, we do great. But again, I have no interest in that market. But I was never going to get into that. You know what I mean? Type of thing. So here I am on this life trajectory where, I could do this to do amazing things, but make myself rich, unfortunately, which would take me probably into a whole nother tangent of life. I mean, that's hard to deny. If I just sat here and remote viewed money targets and made a pile of money, it would be hard to be focused on the important things, probably.
Unless you think the money is the important part. I just want the freedom.
Yeah.
If you're listening, universe, don't take what he said for me. You can bless me at any moment.
Well, that's the reason why I do some things and I don't do others, is it frees me up to kind of have kind of a conscience that's clear of some of that stuff. But anyway, yeah, I mean, it's just I think it's a good idea the way you're describing. You can set something up like that because it is a concern, and so many people are doing these unknown targets anyway, and they're kind of portraying them as fact.
Well, we're doing the big black box, describing the one thing in the black box. I think the solution here that we've come up with is we need to actively think about separating the various influence components and probing those separately.
Yeah. That's a good name for the project. The big black box. The good name for the project too. The big black box. Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah. So it's interesting discussion. Yeah. I mean, this is an amazing for people that watch this. It's an amazing field to be involved in. I mean, it's too bad it's filled with awful people, but it's very interesting science.
The implications of all the stuff is just, it's the most interesting intellectual pursuit, where you can go look at a kid's movie a month before it comes out, and it can shatter worldviews and change your understanding of the way reality works.
Did you see it yet, by the way?
No, I haven't still.
Oh man,
I gotta go to like
away,
a 10
dude.
a.m. matinee or something with the
It
kiddos.
will blow you away. I mean, there's a ton of overlap in that. I actually think I did better than I thought. I mean,
You were bummed at first, and I was stoked. So I was like, I think you're going to be really excited.
Because I knew, I was struggling. I just like I said, I put myself like a certain expectation where if I don't land it just the way I want, I hate myself. Like that. My arch critic.
I was so excited to task the project, and then as soon as you started giving back data, I was like, is this gonna go well when I tell people that it was just a stupid kids movie? And so then I think that's why I'm like over indexing on explaining like, now this has like cool implications for RV, right? But that's kind of I know everybody's itching to do like more projects and stuff. So when I think about what to go task, what to go figure out, what mysteries to do, this is looming. I already have preconceived notions of this. Am I setting people up to just tell a story? And I want to figure that out first before I do that. Does that make sense? I just have this concern because when you task people, you're asking for a lot of their time. And I want it to be worthy for everyone, for everybody to get something out of it, to grow, to feel good about what they did and worked on. I don't want to just, waste everybody's time here. So I'm glad that everybody got the importance of, viewing a future digital project. So that went well.
It was a good one to have in the bank for me. So I had some, if I ever get anything like that again, something I think I'll probably do even a little better on. But also too, I thought some of the other viewers did way better than I would have expected, which tells me that some viewers I think are good at these kinds of targets. I mean, that one guy who drew that, that little coconut guy, it just
chaos.
Again, but I think that some of the other viewers did way better than I did. I think just again, people have their strengths and their weaknesses.
Well, that's where if we view things where everything is uncomfortable is where you learn, right? So if you're doing bad and you're uncomfortable, like that's really like you should go do more of it if you want to grow in that regard. But I think that this is building out a repertoire of things to go do and experience. So.
And targets like that too, when you do targets like that, hopefully it will help differentiate these things that we're discussing down the line, because you've had those, you've had, gosh, this feels like this is a false reality or a story or a movie or an animation.
Building that discernment where we're getting into more granular discernment where I can start making more definitive statements about what it is. And I think that even if we're talking about future predictive targets, is this real? Is this conceptual? Is this imagination? Being able to discern that will be huge in terms of accuracy for like what we're trying to physically describe.
And all practice does, I mean, to me, the biggest part of what's happening over the years is because I feel like it's it just gets better and better and better and better at remote viewing. And this goes for everybody, is the practice, but in the practice is you're getting to know yourself so well. You've passed the ball back so many times with your subconscious, so many messages back and forth, that you're getting a finer, like you said, a finer determination of impressions of exactly what your subconscious is trying to push across the board.
I think we're moving towards naming names and not just describing, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know, maybe that's like the next step where you get really good at something and you can say, oh, because like we'll look at something like that's a structure. It's not like maybe it's a structure, I'm naming it. That is a artificially created surface, right? Like I know that's artificially created. Or like something I got really good at was identifying structured land. So you have an artificially modified land, right? That's like a unique thing. Sculptures, like an ice sculpture always throws everybody for a loop. Because like, is it liquid? Is it ice?
Is
Is
it
it
a
structure?
structure?
Is it
Is it
land?
land? I
I don't know.
those were struggles for me in the beginning, especially like, because you get those, like, you'll get a structure that's built basically a mud hut, like it's built into the land or whatever, and working those gestalt. I mean, again, there's these fine tune, like we talked about before, water and space, very similar. You're trying to work out those differences, and then you're hoping that other data flows in that'll give you an indication one way or the other. Because as soon as you say, is this water or is this space, you're going to go right to the wrong answer. Like you just put yourself in a two-way situation, and you're going to analytically kick in and pick the wrong one.
I love when we describe like weird energetics and stuff, and we're like, it's doing something weird and wonky, and then we all come back and we all say the same thing because we're not bucketing ourselves into our language. We're trying to describe, but we realize we don't even have the words for it. Those are fun.
Yeah.
Well, good discussion, dude. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks for trying out Riverside. Hopefully this recording works better.
Always good to have it's always fun to have a topic and chat with you about these things.
I feel like I have better clarity where I could go task something or talk a little bit about like we should look at these probes or something, or even in the debrief where we go through and we review it, we at least it's on the topic of conversation of, were we really viewing the true nature of it, or are we just getting into the conceptuals?
Yeah, for sure.
Awesome.
It's like, I guess to me it's not about, and that's sort of like, as us as viewers, we got to not worry about being right or wrong. We're just looking for the truth, because that's such a big part of the bias is, So, but
I just want to know what I'm looking at, right? Like, what is it that I'm truly describing, and how can I expand that and describe more? This is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, good chat, buddy.
Awesome.